Ribuongiorno. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. We have on this roundtable a very important task to discuss, and I think that the task is to try to respond to the challenge that those three individuals have given to us, and the challenge is what can be done in order to take out the Italian research and innovation activity from an age of stagnation, from a prolonged period of slowdown and slow activity. I suggest that I think that the four of us have already been introduced by Giustina Magistretti very kindly, and I would like to give my own small contribution as a moderator, maybe in the form of a comment to what these three interviews have provided, and then I think each of us will probably have some 5 or 6 minutes to present something or to provide their views, after which I would very much like to open the discussion to all of us, because I believe that the spirit of ISNAF is very much a spirit of condivisione, of sharing of ideas, and because I think that this annual event of ISNAF has the main purpose of receiving input from all of you. It is always good to see that there is an intense participation. America is a large country. Coming to Washington is not a small feat. So thank you very, very much for being here and for participating in this.
We're just asking to the technical support to check.
Let me start by giving just a few considerations. I believe that the three interventions by the Minister Carrozza, by Piero Bassetti, and by Francesco Merloni are a cry of help. They are a desire. They are a signal of a very deep malaise. The fact itself, and please do not misunderstand, but the fact itself that on one side our new Minister of Education is a robotic scientist and a PhD in robotics and biology. The fact itself is very good, but it is obviously something completely new compared to the past. On the other side, the fact that the two industry representatives are probably both well over 70 is also an indication of where the industry is. 84. 87. So one is 87, the other one is 82. And it is not by chance. There is a gap. I mean, these 20 years of absence have generated a gap. And the gap means that there is an old generation of entrepreneurs and industrialists that is trying to keep going, and probably there is a much younger generation of new entrepreneurs and new scientists which is about to come, but there is very little in the middle. Confindustria says that in the past 10 years, 32,000 companies have closed down in Italy, with a loss of 150,000 employment position, I think. We have at ISNAF have worked for a long time in trying to form, to be a bridge between the United States, between the Italian diaspora in the United States and Italy. But I think that we have made a mistake, and the mistake is reflected in this sentence up above. We have tried mechanistically to take the model of Silicon Valley and translate it to Italy. It is time now to begin thinking on how Italy itself should restart. I think that there is very strong evidence in Europe that the transplanting of a model hasn't worked. And I would like to give you just a few slides, and then I will be over, on an interesting document. The Innovation Union Scoreboard is a annual review performance from the European Union that is measuring 25 statistics on the quality of research, the quality of the output, and the consequences on the economy. And they have done this for about 10 years. And after 10 years, they have written a document which is called Lessons from a Decade of Innovation Policy. I have extracted only 3 or 4 sentences from this document. One is emphasis put on best practices at the expense of a critical understanding of the specific challenges affecting each country. Which is what I said, taking Silicon Valley and trying to duplicate it without a critical evaluation of what is happening in each country. And without an informed discussion about the most appropriate ways to address them. Countries should be encouraged to develop their own specific policy models to a much greater degree, so that each model represents a unique response to the particular challenges that each country is facing. This is not a comment on Italy, it is a comment on Europe, but you can very well see how Italy fits in that comment. The effectiveness of policy requires specific assessment of the innovation capacity of business in the country concerned. In countries where business cannot become equal partner in collaboration, more support for innovation uptake in specific markets should be provided. This is a specific comment about the fact that not in all countries business is reacting in the same way to research. And Italy is one of those countries where this reaction is not taking place. The end is, although the availability of skilled people is often cited as one of the key challenges, there has been only a small share of funding devoted to supporting innovation skill development. So Europe is making a self-criticism about the fact that it is not always, it doesn't work to just take a model of development such as that of Silicon Valley based on venture capitalists and good university and transplant it in another country. You need to develop a much deeper and long-term analysis about the specific aspect of that country. Just to give you 2 more slides or 3 more slides, this is the table of the 2013 Innovation Scoreboard of Europe. The 27 countries of Europe have been divided in 4 groups. The innovation leaders, the innovation followers, the moderate innovators, and the modest innovators. Italy is here. So the first 4 countries are Denmark, Finland, Germany, and Sweden. The second-tier countries include France and the UK, and Italy is together with Malta, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Portugal, Hungary, Spain, and Greece. What is good and what is bad in the scoreboard of Italy? This is the specific 2013 scoreboard of Italy. On the average is the European average in the middle, and the histograms on the right-hand side are the areas in which Italy is better. I know it is difficult to read. This is, for instance, Finland as a comparison, so you can see, visualize the difference. The institutional research does well in Italy. I summarized the previous table for you. International scientific co-publications are above the European average. Open, excellent, and attractive research systems are above the European average. New doctorate students and graduates are above the European average. So the institutional research works. We produce good science, even if a lot of you have left. We still produce good science, but it does not transfer to industry. Venture capital investment is way below the European average. R&D expenditure in the private sector is well below the European average. Innovative SME collaborating with other small companies, collaborating among them, is well below the European average. Public-private scientific co-publication are well below the European average, and patent application are well below the European average. I will stop here. I don't want to go ahead. We can probably do a second round. And I would like to leave the table to Napoleone Ferrara and to Pierluigi Zappacosta and to Professor Zingales for their comments.
Go ahead.
But this, in my opinion, is something we need to think if we want to start contributing or responding to the cry for help that comes from Italy in this moment.
Just a question. I noticed that Finland is number one, or almost number one in Italy, lower down. And I heard, I don't remember, but I read that Finland and Italy are the two countries where productivity has not improved or something like that. So the fact that they are first doesn't mean that everything is fine. So I mean, just to start injecting a little question
Skepticism.
here. Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I'm very pleased to be able to thank Justina for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. I'm not an economist or a sociologist. I'm not the best person to analyze the complexity of the problems. Why Italy is behind. I thought it was very interesting. We heard, I think it was the politician from Marke made this point that the 20 decades of demagogy and populism have been a major problem. That may very, very well be so. And I don't think it's going to be very easy to resolve this problem. Let me tell you a little bit my background. Once again, I'm a scientist, actually. I left Italy now 3 decades ago, in 1983. Like many people, I did a postdoc. I went to the United States to San Francisco with the idea of returning after 2 or 3 years. Of course, I did not stay. And so, unlike many of my colleagues, many people were in, my career path has been a little bit different because I spent 25 years of my career in an industry, in the biotechnology industry, at Genentech. I started at the time when going from academia to industry was really something very almost embarrassing, was going to the dark side. But I thought it's been a great experience. It's been a fundamental experience for me because actually it's been possible to do some scientific discoveries combined with develop some therapeutics. Actually, I've been very fortunate. My basic research resulted into measure drugs. One drug used for cancer, which is one of the top cancer drug called bevacizumab or Avastin, and a drug for eye disease, which is called Lucentis, which has been had probably very significant impact on blindness, in macular degeneration. And I think that this has been possible in a very unique environment, in the Genentech, with the very creative environment within the Silicon Valley. Probably, we talk about Italy. I might think it would be very, very difficult to do anywhere else in the United States, let alone a European country. And this makes ties with what Francesco Della Porta said about we need to be very realistic and do what can actually be done, not in abstract, not try to imitate, the Silicon Valley model, which is extremely difficult. The success of the Silicon Valley area, but in the biotechnology, especially in the computer industry, internet, etc., is reflected this very unique, climate of venture capital and especially science. Many of you probably noticed that the founders of Google and Yahoo came both all from the programming computer science at Stanford. So you have also universities like UCSF and Berkeley. So this is a very unique, place, which once again it would be very, very difficult to recreate it, to copy, this model and just import it in Italy. Even anywhere else in the world or the United States, it could be very difficult to do so. So once again, I think that it's very important to be realistic and to have some professionalism. I participate in many of this, roundtable. One theme which is very recurrent, is the encouragement people to be innovative in Italy, to initiate some startup, to participate in the economy, to contribute to economy. But this is maybe a very naive idea. It can be very wishful thinking. It can be like, to use an Italian word, I think the best word they can find is velleitario. Because it is very, very difficult if you don't have a very precise idea, if you don't have, it's got to be, that almost inevitably will result in failures. Once again, try to do what is possible, what is realistic, I think is probably the most important kind of, contribution to that. So I will say, leave it to what, Pierluigi has to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, if Luigi Zingale speaks, I could avoid speaking because we were talking before, and he's much more articulated than me. He writes articles on Sole 24 Ore, so would be better. But anyway, you have noticed that there is the word Innova next to my name. It's not because I'm a professional innovator. It happens to be that the company I'm involved with is called Innova, and the organizer felt it was nice to have someone with this characteristic. Yes, I was one of the founders of ISNAV, but I was one of the two token normal people, non-scientists, non-scholar, no-nothing. It just Francesco and me had a business background, and Vito wanted some representation of the Gaijin or the Gentiles population, so it fell on us. Anyway, talking about innovation, I felt that I do know something about it because I believe strongly in innovation. The only reason my children were able to go to private schools is because the company I work for innovated a lot, and both in products and also in business practices. In fact, when I look at my performance as a CEO, one of the many criticisms that I blame on myself is that I innovated too much. And I will just give you a little hint. In the early 90s, Logitech was the first company to introduce a digital camera. It was a beauty. 64,000 pixels of black and white. 64,000, not millions. Huh? And it went for a modest $600. It was a raging, not a success, no. We had to sell it to Kodak. But anyway, we were about 15 years too early to market, and that can be very costly. So innovation by itself is not the end of the story. You can be wrong. And in fact, most innovation fail because, as Einstein said, to have good ideas, you have to have lots of ideas. And it works also with the products. And actually, the most innovative products are the most risky. Look at the intelligence of Steve Jobs. Obviously, everybody thought that he has invented the iPod. Well, let me tell you that many years before, there were MP3 players. It's just that he did it beautifully. So he didn't take a risk of what to do. He just decided to do something that was there and had a clear role, much better. Same thing with the phone, and the same thing with the iPad. Newton was the first tablet, and that was many years before when Jobs was not at Apple. So it's very easy, well, not easy, absolutely not easy, but it's easier to innovate when you take an established product and you make it better. But when you really want to have innovation, like discovering the drugs that Napoleone has discovered at Genentech, to control angiogenesis, that's really genius. So maybe he'll get the Nobel Prize for that. But so I say that the emphasis on innovation can be risky. I saw a report from the EU. It seems that now in Italy, what we think is no longer very valid. We have to look at the EU because they really know what's going on. So if we look at the European Union report about the strong deindustrialization of Italy since 2007, they claim that there are 4 root causes: high cost of energy, bureaucracy, lack of credit, I suppose especially to the small PMI, the small and piccolo and medium industry, and modest investment in R&D spending and innovation. So for the experts of the European Union, the investment in R&D and in innovation is one of the 4. My claim is that probably it's the least important. And if you want my pick, I will go for bureaucracy as being the biggest problem of Italy. I think that in my books, bureaucracy is really the biggest cancer that is consuming the Italian economy, and I would say the society, the Italian society. the Italian bureaucracy delivers at most a minimum value to the country, but it creates innumerable roadblocks that cost huge amounts in terms of impeded or delayed progress. And when, for people who live in the US, we are used to the fact that, if you don't get an answer for the bureaucracy, usually there is an escape valve. Like, if you don't receive an answer within 30 days, your request is considered approved. It doesn't work like that in Italy. And when the bureaucracy does not deliver, the only recourse left is personal, political, or economical pressure, which in most cases are morally corrupting options that one would never like to do. And because bureaucracy and politics are intertwined and self-reinforcing, what they do, they are the Robin Hood, the reverse Robin Hood. They take from the good company and they give to the bad companies. So who are these bad companies? The bad companies are exactly the companies that do not innovate, that are not able to export, are not able to compete. The good companies in Italy, in my opinion, are quite innovative. I mean, I'll give you examples which are a little ridiculous, you might want, but I'm from Abruzzi. I was leaving, as I was leaving from Chieti to come back to the States, I saw, there was an article in which a local chef, quite an important chef, two Michelin star chef in Abruzzi, has been helping an entrepreneur, and also in a collaboration with the University of Milano, the Professor Lucio Brancadoro della Facoltà di Scienze Agrarie. And they have selected a variety of a local grapes, which is called Pecorino, and they've moved it to higher altitude to generate, I don't drink much wines, but the spatial things that the terroir and this and that, Anyway, they will sell it very expensive, and this year, for the first time, they had their first grapes. So, I mean, you might say it's stupid things. No, because actually, the agricultural products in Italy is the best performing segment, and so the fact that there is this kind of innovation is great. But, look at the fashion area. I mean, are you aware that Italian seems to be the only company able to start new companies? The problem is that they go up to a certain place and then the French buy them. So, because we are unable to do what? I mean, why is it that small Italian companies are not able to grow bigger? Not because they lack innovation. Maybe like me, they are too innovative and they start doing crazy things, and then the expenses are higher than what they get back. But I think that certainly in that sense, the lack of credit to small company can be one element that can explain why small companies in Italy don't things. And I certainly would mention the fact that in Italy, to be successful is not something to be celebrated, but it's something to be ashamed, because of course, if you are successful, you must have stolen. And the recent governments have gone after any people with money with the clear assumption that they have not paid all the taxes that they were due. I mean, maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, I don't know, but that means that if you are successful in Italy, you better watch, because something bad could happen to you. But in any case, I could put all these things together in this, in what the EU report called bureaucracy. It's the system that does not work in Italy. It's not the research. We are creative people. Italians have always been creative. And in terms of innovation, despite the not so good schools, because frankly, university as an institution are not very good. Obviously, smart people are distributed everywhere in the world with the same distribution. So smart people are everywhere. Great smart professor, you'll find them in Italy. But look at the system that should support them. It does not work. But anyway, so in this respect, innovation is not so bad. It could be much better, but it's not so bad. What is really, really bad is the system that prevents these creative companies from being more successful. And in a sense, you know, the good news would be for the bad companies, the one that survives only thanks to 1,000 favors from the authority and the bureaucrats, etc., from the system. If those companies went away, that would be the best news for Italy. I know I look like a heartless, what they call capitalist, but the reality is that if we don't reallocate resources from the people who destroy the resources to the one who create wealth, so from the one who destroy wealth to the one who create wealth, we will not go anywhere. But because Italy is a place of good people, we are buoni. The buonismo italiano is another of our big problems. So as soon as you start proposing some strategy that could hurt someone, even if it's only a short period, it's like the doctor who has make something to cure a problem with the wound or something like that. But because we are not very good with that, I don't know. I tell you that I'm not too optimistic about the future. But Professor Zingales has the answer, so let's listen to him.
So Pierluigi is too nice, as you know, and they say in Italian, who knows how to do does, who doesn't know how to do teaches. And I am in the category of the one who teach, and he is in the category of the one who can do. How do you open that one, the beginning, number one? Speaking of not knowing how to do. So what I want to do, I agree with most of what has been said so far. I want to put like things into context, in historical context, because many of us get a sense that Italy is in trouble, but I don't think we have a sense of really what is the cause, the deep cause of this trouble, and how we can fix it. And so I want to start from the following fact. This is the annualized GDP per capita growth in the last basically 15, 16 years. And Italy is by far the worst developed countries in these statistics, okay? And you talk about Japan having lost 2 decades. You see Japan is out there and is doing almost as well as the United States. So Italy has lost 2 decades, much worse than Japan. And what is interesting is that I don't bring here the statistics for the previous years, but in the previous 2 decades, Italy did fairly well. And what is kind of problematic is a lot of the usual stuff that we say about Italy, that Italy has small firms, specialized in the wrong sector, has too much bureaucracy, has a corrupt political class, you name it. And I'm sorry to say, was there also 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's not like 30 years ago I was in Italy. I remember the political class was very corrupt. The bureaucracy did not work, and the firms were small. All the things we have seen that people generally blame for the lack of growth in Italy are not there. Were there before and are there now, so it's very hard to use them to explain this dramatic slowdown. And if you want to see a graphic representation of this, this is the decomposition of what are the cause of this productivity slowdown. And the blue thing is our specialization. We're specializing in sectors that don't grow that much. This was there before, is there today, has not changed. The green part is how we direct our resources that are the more growing or less growing sector, how we allocate, and was not working well before and after. The big things that change is this red part, which is basically leftover. The productivity, for whatever reason, has slowed down in a way that is very hard to explain according to any data. So what I've tried to do is I try to explain it with something else. So one factor, and here I give you a very short version. If you want, you can get more in the discussion, but basically into 3 factors. The first one is we invest less in capital per hour work than we used to, okay? And then maybe this is due to increased taxation, maybe due to a lot of things, but there is a component. So if you look at our gap in productivity growth, that in the last 15 years is basically 22%. We have lost 22% vis-a-vis our comparable countries. A little bit less than a fourth of that is due to lack of investment in Capita. The second, however, has to do, at least in my view, to the ICT revolution. The ICT revolution has been much stronger in the United States than Europe in general, but has been particularly slow in Italy. And my guess, and at this point is more the hunch than a sort of established fact, but my hunch is that there is something intrinsic to the Italian organizational way of doing business that makes it difficult to standardize and sort of exploit the advantage of the IT revolution. And so you can see the difference between the typical Italian bar with a V-star box. One is completely non-digitalized, the other is completely digitalized. And there are costs and benefits, but I think that we have a hard time doing that. And so if you look at measure of how the country is ready to exploit the ICT revolution, now there are some, you see that not surprisingly, Italy is at the bottom of the distribution, and the countries that did the best, like Sweden, Finland, etc., they're always at the top in this. And so this alone can explain another fourth, in my view, of this delay of Italy. Italy has been particularly bad, and what I've done here is skip some of the steps, but what I've done is I look not only across country, but also across sectors. Italy does particularly bad in the sectors that in the last 15 years have taken advantage of the ICT revolution. And so it's likely that his inability to take advantage of that. And not surprisingly, the last is R&D. These are various statistics of R&D across countries. Same pattern, Scandinavian countries doing very well, Italy doing very poorly. And once again, sort of, we are doing particularly bad in the sectors that need more the R&D. And why this was not a problem in the 60s and 70s and 80s and became a problem in the 90s and the 2000s is because Italy has now moved toward the frontier of the technology, has moved toward a developed country with high cost of labor. When we were catching up, we're just copying everybody else. And catching up, you don't need to know how to innovate or implement the innovation to succeed. You need to just be fast at taking advantage of somebody else's innovation. And Italy did this very well, like other countries has done this very well, like China is doing that very well today. Once you reach the technological frontier, you need to be able to innovate yourself, and that's dramatically different. And I tell my students, this is the difference between being a good undergraduate student and writing a good doctoral dissertation. You become a good graduate student simply by learning fast and repeating fast what you have learned. That generally prepare you to write good papers, but the correlation is far from one. There are people who are fantastic at taking exams and are completely incapable of producing their own research. And that transition is the one that Italy really failed in doing. So I am very much in the spirit of what has been said before. I think that we don't necessarily lack the production of new ideas. We lack the ability to transfer. We lack the ability to exploit them. And we don't like innovativeness, but innovativeness is often sort of relegated, if you want, to lower level of the society. In an earlier paper I've written, I found that there is a negative correlation in Italy between your year of education and your probability of becoming an entrepreneur. And it's not because all our entrepreneurs are Harvard dropout like Bill Gates. It's because, as actually Engineer Merloni was saying, our entrepreneurs used to be sort of the farmers or the sort of foreman in a factory that innovated by taking advantage of the existing technology over there. If you go in the area of Veneto, there are 5 factories of Pandoro. They all come from people that used to work at Bauli, and then they innovate by producing their own brand of Pandoro and succeed, which is perfectly a fine method to operate, works very well in the catch-up phase. But if you now want to sort of conquer other markets, establish yourself throughout the world, you have to have a bigger vision. And you have to have people that are not only able at doing the small arbitrage, but they have a bigger view. And honestly, I think that the Italian school does not prepare that at all, not only in terms of notions, but in terms of sort of spirit. I am a proud product of the Italian school. I had a fantastic high school in Padua, in a Liceo Classico. I have to say that the only reason why I went to do economics is because Bocconi had this program that was called Discipline Economiche e Sociali. And so it looks like philosophy and sort of had some business component. If it was just Economia e Commercio, I would never have gone to do Economia e Commercio because Commercio sounded like a low-level thing. After like 5 years of classic, your view is that the high, smart people in society do philosophy, who can do philosophy become a lawyer and a doctor, and if you're really, really incompetent, then you become sort of an entrepreneur. I think that that's the social pecking order that the Italian school transmits to the new generation. And so it's not a surprise that we have fantastic academic researchers who, by the way, leave Italy because the environment is not good and come here to produce great research, but we lack the transition. We lack the admiration for people like Pierluigi who actually are able to transfer some idea into practice. And over the years in the United States and teaching entrepreneurship, I have sort of learned the difficulties of doing that. Ideas are cheap, execution is extremely difficult. And that's the part that we don't sort of train our people enough and we don't do enough to change. Thank you.
So, we have heard from Pierluigi that the system is broken. We have heard from Napoleone that the model is not transferable. We have heard from Zingales that the society and the culture is broken and that only the least. So what is to be done here? What
Depression immediately.
yes. So the point, and I'd like to turn this question sincerely to you. I mean, we are a group, you are a fantastic group of the best and the brightest young people that, not only the best and the brightest, but also the most courageous, the bravest one, because it takes courage to move away, to go away from your country. There are a lot of bright people who are still in Italy just because they don't have the courage to leave family or to go away from their town. At one point, they were called the bamboccioni. Italy is full of bamboccioni. Unfortunately, now it's full of bamboccioni per force because they don't have the money to buy a house or to rent an apartment and live. They are economic bamboccioni. So what is to be done? I would like to hear your opinions about, well, first of all, if you agree with this kind of assessment, and then what are your proposals? We already have two hands rising, one from Vito and one from Bertuzza. Stefano Bertuzza, we let as a host, we let Stefano Bertuzza first. No, I think.
Thank you. I take your provocative question, and it's a tough nut to crack. For sure. But my answer would be, or my point of discussion would be, it's a system problem. So what seems to be lacking is a strategic planning. And I agree with Napoleone that the system is not replicable. I mean, you've been very understated and very kind, but Genentech is a very, very, very unique experience that has essentially made of basic science, a whole culture of completely changing the paradigm of how drug discovery is done, moving from brute force of screening compounds to starting instead from the biology and understanding what the mechanisms are and really delivering really innovative drugs. And this takes a lot to do. And I would like to quote one study from the National Academy of Sciences It's called by two economists, Jerry and Marie Thursby at Georgia Tech. It's called Here or There. They interviewed everywhere, all around the world, CEOs from multinational drug industry or involved in biotech in general, asking, what are the key criteria that you use to make decision of where to put your R&D plans? And the number one answer was proximity to universities, where you can get it. It's not IP protection. I mean, that's a component. There's many other, but proximity to innovators, proximity to centers of basic science, and that was off the chart. So what I think it's missing in Italy is, I'm not an expert, I mean, I left Italy a long time ago, but seems from looking at it from the United States that it's missing that sense of a plan, of a strategic plan, and say, what is it that we want to focus our resources on? I mean, I really like your example of what is innovation, because if you think about it, we put a man on the moon before we put wheels on suitcases. And I would argue that they're both very important innovations. So innovation can come from many different ways and can be very fundamental. It's just the culture, just the system, that you need to see, because innovation takes a life of its own. And so I think that is very important. So I want to conclude just with one question. So to me, it's a system problem, it's a strategic planning at a central level that unless you do that, it won't work on its own, because research is a public good, and if you don't get that, it doesn't happen. And I have a question for Luigi Zingales, if you want to answer is, do you think that the national debt has had an effect on those data that you just showed us? The fact that there's always been sort of catching up for Italy, and so never really that sense of broad planning because the resources were not there. And that's a concern that I have for the United States right now, which is actually, for the first time ever, we have cut by 5.5% biomedical research budget from the government. Never happened before, while China is increasing 10% and Germany 5% and so on and so forth. So I wonder whether there is a connection there.
Can we have Professor Campese before you?
Absolutely.
Reply? Perhaps a couple more.
Absolutely.
I hear two different messages from Zappacosta and from you in terms of innovation. Luigi is saying innovation is not really the problem. He put it last in the list, in his list. You're saying it's a problem of R&D, productivity R&D is one of the major problems. We are here believing in another concept, and that is that innovation, research leading to innovation, is really the basis to progress and probably improving the situation in Italy. Could you clarify that apparent contradiction? I think in Italy there is too much complacency in saying we are intelligent, we are smart, we are good, we are innovative, we are creative. Well, where is all of this? I mean, there is part of it, but where is all of this? You look at the mathematics, Italians are the worst among 26 countries. You look at ability to read, and they are close to the last. Something is not functioning right. The chemical industry in Italy that used to be one of the prime ministers is dead. The pharmaceutical industry in Italy is dead. Nuclear industry in Italy is dead. And I hear there is too much innovation. Really doesn't jive well with what we see in the scenario in Italy. I would really like some clarification.
Any other question, please? Or comment, I mean, not necessarily questions, but you have to take notes because most of the questions are there. You will have to answer.
Open? Yeah. Hi. I came in 1977, and I work in Italy as well here. So I know very well the system from my perspective of work in the field of medicine, since I'm a physician. What I observe in Italy of 34 years ago is still there, which I think the major problem, cultural problem, is that we still work in Italy with a nepotism instead of meritorium. Our way to hire people is through knowing each other versus how valuable is the person. And also, one thing is lacking in Italy is the yearly evaluation, which really create a completely different cultural work.
Thank you. And the gentleman there. Sorry, I cannot read your name from that.
Just a small comment. I'm sure there's not one solution to one problem. There are many altogether. I've lived in the university in Italy, and I live in the university in the United States. And I have children growing in the United States. And I see in Italy, you are not trained to think out of the box. You're not trained to do things that are not just a standard. You have examples, you have inspiration by somebody, but it's just episodes that can happen. I see my children here in the United States that are stimulated to think out of the box, to do things actually beyond what they are just expected to be in a normal school. And that requires discipline and training, not just a good idea. I think creativity is good, but it's not enough, and the discipline and the training that is in the United States requires probably decades to be developed in Italy.
I suggest that at this point we leave at least the first two questions for Professor Zingales. I would like myself to answer to the third one about nepotism, and perhaps one of you would like to answer to the last one.
I need to answer Vito first, because it seems that I was here saying that no, we innovate too much in Italy. Let's stop all this innovation in Italy that is killing us. You know, I didn't say that. You are a doctor, so I mean, my image is the one of a poor guy who comes to the hospital and he has a broken leg, but then you realize that he also has, a problem inside, and it's a mess. And well, yeah, the leg is okay. It's a problem, and it would be better if he wasn't there, and you can fix it. But the big problem is inside. So I mean, that's what I meant. Is that we could do better with innovation, but it's not what is killing us. And just another two very, very quick comments. You're talking about the strategic problem, lack of a strategic vision. I think we are one step behind. It's even worse than what you think, because I've been to meetings, because the Z, we sat together in one of these meetings, and what was absolutely crazy is that the higher up, the ministers, and maybe we can say those were ministers of the previous government, and so now everything has changed maybe, but the previous high position people did not even acknowledge that there was a problem. If someone in the audience would criticize Italy, they would somehow say, no, I mean, absolutely, we are the best. So that's, if we don't accept that there is a problem, then, And talking about the university that the other gentleman was mentioning, my son, who obviously was born in the US and studied there, came here. All my children actually have been abroad, but the two of them have been in Italy. And one of them was telling me that the problem with university, yeah, sure, it's true. You also noticed what you mentioned, that there was a lot of, basically you have to learn exactly how to answer certain question, and it doesn't open up the mind. But what struck him a lot more than that was that the professor would come in, teach for 1 hour, and then poor guy, he had to leave to go and get a cup of coffee because he couldn't really carry on 2 hours. So after 15 minutes for coffee, and then he would come back. What is that in terms of respect for the time of teaching? So, and that to me is part of that basic problem, which everything which is mentioned here goes back to the lack of seriousness, the lack of when I travel from Pescara to Milano, 55 minutes, and so there are three people, the three hostesses, but actually typically are men, are there. They give biscotti, salatini, acqua, aranciata, and so it's a lot of work. And then in the last 20 minutes, they have to close down, they have to close the curtain and rest, because they are destroyed after 20 minutes of work. And unfortunately, it's typical of Alitalia service. And unfortunately, it's typical of Italian working for the government or similar to organizations which are assimilated to the government like Alitalia. And that's a big problem. Sorry.
Pierluigi, we all like very much your quotation, but I suggest that we try, at least for the next 20 minutes, to stay away from anecdotal evidence of how bad is the Italian system.
But I'm not a researcher like him. You know, he does data. I have little facts.
We all
With regard to what Francesco was saying about potential short-termism created by the large level of debt, I think is an intriguing possibility. In Italy, I think, as Pierluigi was saying, is a bit worse because I always quote the following fact, which is pretty shocking. As a result of joining the euro, we had a huge dividend given by the fact that the interest rate went down. So if, as a country, just use that dividend to reduce the level of debt, so not reduce any expenditure in real terms, simply not increase it, and use the savings to pay down the debt, today the debt to GDP would be 80%. Okay, so I don't, instead of 130, sorry, I gave for granted that you knew it, but so that's a dramatic difference. It's a different, 80% would be lower than what is in Germany. So that would be like an outstanding situation. So I think that shows that it's not just, maybe for the United States that's a problem. I think we have a much deeper problem than the United States.
But you can always join the euro.
No, let me say two other things. One is answering to Vito. I think that I'm not in contradiction with what Pierluigi is saying. I'm not saying that bureaucracy is not a problem. I'm trying to explain why is more a problem today than it was 20 or 30 years ago. And I think that the secret is the combination of technology with innovation makes it particularly difficult. So you get a huge advantage in using IT technology, but then if you have to print the form in the way the minister is telling that you print them, and they're not compatible with their software, you lose a lot of that innovation advantage because of that. And so that makes it more difficult for us to make a step. But I want to throw two ideas because correctly we said we are here bitching and moaning about Italy, but that's not the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of the meeting is what we can do to change Italy. And I think that I am starting to do two things, and I invite all of you to join forces or try to find alternative things, etc. But one is very simple, is to try to actually, very simple but very complex, is to try slowly to change the culture at the younger generation. Just all the generation are lost. They're not going to change. Our hope is to change people early on. And so what I've been doing is now when I go to Italy, I try to go in high schools and give talks in high schools. And it's very interesting both ways. I learn a lot from what Italian high schools are about, and hopefully they learn something about the opportunities and a different way of thinking about. And I cannot tell any anecdote, but later if you want, I tell you an interesting anecdote I had in one of the schools. The second one, which is much more important, and I think as an individual we cannot do it, but as ISNAF we might think about doing, is the following. Now, let's imagine that we get lucky and all of a sudden we have a leader that wants to change Italy. Do we have a program of how Italy is to be changed? And the answer is no. So I think that what we should do as ISNAF is trying to elaborate what are the things that we can do to change Italy. And as was said before, feasible thing. Because transforming the University of Capita into Harvard is not going to happen. And if we dedicate resources to that, we are wasting money. However, there are enormous opportunities. I got insulted by a lot of scientists, so probably this is going to be another time, because I said, look, in Italy, it makes more sense to invest in tourism than in biotechnology. But I think the answer is we're not going to produce a next Genetech. On the other hand, we are the most beautiful country on the face of Earth. And we don't exploit this enough. France has twice as many tourists per year than Italy. And that hurts, not only because we're better than the French, but it's because sort of Italy has gigantically more opportunities. It says you come to Washington and you see sort of the Jefferson Memorial, but how many people know that that's a copy of the Rotonda in Palladio in Vicenza, that, by the way, is not even visitable every day of the year at every hour. So in order to go, and there's not even a parking lot in front of that place. That should be a major resort location. Every American should go and visit the Palladian real things in Veneto. They don't even have a parking lot in front of it, not to mention somebody that sells some reproduction. Anyway, I stop there.
Thank you. I think there is another. Oh, I think that, sorry, before that, I think we owe an answer to your question or to your comment about nepotism. And I'd take the opportunity to say that 3 years ago, I think, we were at the Bocconi University, at your alma mater, presenting a proposal for the reform of the Italian university. Was it 3 or 4 years ago, Vito?
Well, it was 4 years, 3-4 years ago. But then there was a follow-up to that. We were invited by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and MUR to rehash that document, and some Mario Sassaposto here, myself, another group of individuals worked the entire summer to put together a document of about 110 pages, very comprehensive document that addresses your point on how to restructure university and the research in Italy. It's a very comprehensive document. When the government changed, we haven't heard any answers to that document, all right? So that's where we are.
Just to say that this.
Among those things, issues such as nepotism,
Yeah.
they're all clear.
Yeah, nepotism was one of the top 3 or 4 priorities, of course. But we do have some advantages in that. For instance, now the Ministry of Health is giving us the assignment to select doctors for positions. So something is in fact happening, and we are doing a little bit of that.
So can I say one thing about nepotism? Because when I wrote my book on Captains for the People, and I was mentioning the fact that in Italy, the emergency room doctors are chosen based on political affiliation, the editor did not believe it. Said, are you sure about that? Can you please check? Can you provide me the facts? Because he couldn't believe. And so I would say something that, as many of the things I say makes me unpopular, but I think is correct. It says, the reason why there is so much nepotism in Italy is a cultural tradition that goes back to, I'm sorry to say, the Catholic Church. Why? The reason why nepotism was invented in Rome in the Catholic Church is because the Catholic Church had a monopoly. And if you were trying to differentiate yourself and say things slightly different, you were burned alive, like Giordano Bruno proved in Campo dei Fiori. Why am I saying this? Now, the church has changed, and I love the new pope, so I'm not against the church. I'm just saying, historically, there is a very strong association between monopoly and corruption and nepotism. Why? Because if you are a Protestant church in the United States, you're never going to appoint an idiot at the head of your parish, because there is competition. And if you appoint an idiot, the loyal customers disappear because it's an idiot. In Italy, in the Catholic Church, there was no alternative, so you had to go there. You can appoint your idiot. And that has remained in the culture, and that's the reason why Italy is so averse to competition, because competition is the disinfectant of corruption. Here, you don't think about appointing an idiot, not because Americans are intrinsically more moral, it's because you don't want to lose the competition. If the University of Chicago, we don't appoint an idiot because we don't want to lose the competition with Stanford and Harvard. Actually, with Harvard and Stanford, they already lost. But anyway.
I object.
Just one thing about just competition, exactly what you say is correct, that if we do have the yearly evaluation, the idiots go away.
It is. Who evaluates the evaluators? That's exactly the problem.
Sorry, let's go on with a little bit of order. There is one one gentleman there, and then there are three more questions.
Right. Before Luigi said his penultimate comment about his investing from science and investing in tourism, I was going to say I was totally in agreement with him. So let's remain to the first part of the thought. I mean, the idea that we really have to invest in culture the next generation. And I can provide you with this experience. I split my time between Yale University and the University of Milano, which means that I'm in contact with students there and in Italy. And I talk to students in New Haven as well as in Milano. And I can notice the differences, the drive that they have in US to succeed and to do all is needed, and the sort of more passive attitude that they have in Milano. And when I talk to the students in Milano, there are two kinds of students. The first one, the first kind, it's a very little percentage, they just want to get out of the system. So what they're going to ask me is, how do I get out? Do you want to study or do research? No, I want to go and work in the United States. The other 98%, they're just passive. You know, they don't even know what to ask. So I did the following experiment. I bought 2 books from the president of Yale University, Rich Levine, who really collected his talks. They're so inspiring. They talk about competition. They talk about higher education. They talk about taking and giving back and so on and so forth. And I gave it to them. I gave it to the representative of the students and said, now you read this, then we'll meet again. And you tell me, because you don't even know what to ask. You don't even know what to pretend for the system. You have to know what you are. You have to ask from your professor, and that's the only way you can get it. And I was so surprised when, after a while, they came back to me and they said, we read it, and so, oh, very interesting. So that's it? Why it's going to be difficult to apply here? Say, why it's going to be difficult to apply here? Well, the culture. I said, but why? Tell me more. And we're going to have a scheduled meeting with the whole students and talk about this and question and answer. But I had the feeling that behind is competition. Okay, they are afraid of competition. They are afraid of risking. They are afraid of what the president of Yale University says. You know, that you have to compete. You have to be driven to go on and so forth. So again, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing that they are taught at the Liceo. We attended the same high school, Luigi. And this is where we have to fight. And another thing we have to fight, and I'm going to quote a line from Giampaolo Pansa recently in the Corriere della Sera. He wrote, italiani, cinici quanto basta, indifferenti al bene comune, ammiratori dei furbi e sprezzanti dei coerenti. Io credo che, I believe this is the basic cultural difficulties that we are facing, and we can only do that by talking to the students, being open, and let them know what they need to expect from us.
There are 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and 5. Sorry, but it's hard to keep. No, there was somebody else before. Yes.
Can I?
I am in a unique position that I have a laboratory in Rome working active, and I work in the United States.
Can I interrupt you? There was another gentleman before. Sorry, but let's
We can do ladies first. It's fine. I can wait 2 minutes.
She comes. She's number 4 in this upgrade list.
So I love up.
3 other people. Sorry, madam. I apologize, but let's try to.
So
the rules.
Shall I take the upgrade? I'll take the upgrade to seat 1.
Right.
So it seems to me, from what I'm hearing, that innovation is a direct result of investment in education and in research. I think we all agree, we more or less all agree on this. Education and research in most of the Western world is a political decision, how much money we put into it. And it seems to me that worldwide, not just Italy, we're going through a moment of dramatic crisis in which the political class we have selected do not understand the importance of putting money in education and in research. Let it be the United States or Italy. or Hungary or Greece. It's the same. So how do we break it? We don't invest in education. We'll never select a political class that is able to understand the value of education and research, and then we break in innovation. To me, it seems like it's a catastrophic crisis that all we can do is move to China. So how do we do it?
There is a gentleman there and a gentleman there, and then the lady that has a laboratory in Rome.
May I?
Please go ahead.
So, my name is Pasquale Amendola. I'm 26 and I'm from University of Bologna, but Arizona State University. I'm an environmental engineer. So I have a few questions because I've been listening a lot. So anyway, on the economical point of view, I don't understand why Italy cannot focus on those fields and sectors that made Italy 30, 40 years ago. But we are trying to go and move in another kind of view. Like you talked about bringing the Silicon Valley model and applying that to Italy. I don't understand why we are trying to copy other countries and why not to focus on our own strength and move forward to on that. For example, Italy is famous for cheese, wine. You talked about fashion, how many other things. Hollywood, we saw the video clip from, they tried to give anyway, they're in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, wherever they are. There are some sectors that are not really considered right now. And we are trying to go and work in other kinds of sectors. Other things that Italy probably is not really the best. The other things that I've been listening, one of the reasons why I left Italy, it was because I was in Iceland and I was doing my bachelor degree. And I was in a kind of internship, and somebody asked me, what do you think? What do you think about this thing, this project? And it took me, I was surprised because in Italy, the way that I've been taught, it was stay in the room, don't touch anything, don't talk. There is a lack of communications between professors, between scholars and companies. What instead here I found coming and working in the United States, I came with my own idea, and there were people around me that they were willing to listen what I was talking about. And together, we have been able to get money from national organization, and they funded us. So we're not talking about dreams, but I just saw that going a little bit abroad, and you showed data about Finland, Sweden. Those are countries that, since high school, there is a communication between the kids and the professors. People mention that they have kids in the United States. If in the United States in high school and you do the chemistry project and you're good, or you're coming with something totally new, you have people from university, they come home and they tell you, do you want to come and study with us? We will pay everything. So I learned the word patent here in the United States, okay? Because I was not able to understand what was it before, and I'm not an economist, I'm an engineer. It's something that in Italy is missing, and I believe that if there would be, since high school, college, more willing to understand, not invest in education at this point, but believing in education, I think that probably, it would not be the solution, but at least would be a starting point. That's it.
I like very much the idea of believing in education. I think it's very good. I think that we have room for two more interventions. One is that gentleman there and the lady that we have interrupted earlier on. And after that, we will have a small final round here at the table.
Thank you so much. My name is Lorenzo Giacani. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Washington in Seattle. And I agree that Italy needs innovation and startup companies that are sort of a womb where innovation is born. And I know that startup companies are often born out of like a brilliant idea. And that brilliant ideas oftentimes are born inside universities. So I was wondering, what is your opinion about trying to implementing within Italian universities real centers for commercializations, like something that can work as an incubator for somebody that has a bright idea. For instance, I have a bright idea that I want to make into a product, I could, start figuring out if I have to go out to a venture capitalist and pitching my idea and see if they like it and so forth. But if the university had sort of like this startup incubator, I could go there and meet with a patent attorney, people that are in commerce and so forth, and see if that can create, if they can help me create this startup company. I don't know if this exists in Italy. I don't know if it would be well received, because the issue is that, of course, if you go to an incubator that is within a university, the intellectual property of the tool or the thing that you make your product will still probably belong to the university. So some people might be discouraged because they want the intellectual property because, of course, they make more money out of it. But I would like to know what is your opinion, if this is being done in Italy, if you think it should be done, and if you think that as ISNA we should.
We will answer. We will answer that question.
Okay. How does this works? One thing is that I was saying that I am a lab still working in Rome, and I have moved also in the States, and I have an operational here. So I am very well familiar with what you said. Let's stop saying how things are done here, and let's see how they are done there. And my own experience tells a lot that agrees with what I heard. In Italy, I do innovation, because they leave me there. They don't ask me what I do. They don't want to know what my results are. I have freedom. I have a freedom with very few money and very little money to do very innovative search and to do exploration. The problems arise when I want to go from the proof of principle to the R&D. And the reason that the problem arises, because I go from my own salary and my own time and 30,000 euros, that's how much it costs to do a decent, innovative project in an Italian university, to the 200,000, 300,000 euros that you need to start scaling up. And this already gives you.
Which field?
I do in biomedical research. I do research in biomedical research, and I do translational medicine.
30,000 euros.
30,000 euros. If you are very careful, and we are bright in Italy, isn't it?
Of course.
It's good. So at that point, it comes the problem of the paternalism, because to do and to go to the kind of money that you need for the R&D, then you have to go to approval to a higher level. And then there are considerations like how to protect jobs, how to create jobs, etc., that decide instead in innovation. But I would like to say then that I put myself into the reason, how do I feel in this adventure in the United States? Do I feel like a failure of the Italian system or not? And I must say that I don't feel like a failure of the Italian system at all. And the reason why is that if I look around Mount Sinai, there are 5 medical doctors above me that are from Great Britain, that couldn't find a job in Great Britain. Great Britain prefers to put in their medical system people from India. And this doctor doesn't feel like they have been expelled by Great Britain. So when I think how things should be done there, then my real question is, why can't we produce 5 doctors that are better than these British, so that we will have 5 Italians here? Why don't we improve the education so that we see this as an opportunity to get more people abroad and to stop crying aloud about ourselves, about why this Italian system fails? Because let's face it, the Italian system is not failing at all. You know, it always starts on the verge of crying. It's since I was at the new university that at the beginning of my university that I'm hearing everything is failing, everything is failing. We are going to implode in 3 years from now. 30 years have passed.
Maybe this is part of the Italian culture to always complain, and this is one thing that might have to be changed. But thank you. I think there are many questions on the table. I think that we are going to close. Thank you for your contribution. I think it was lively and useful.
Can I
No, I
answer?
was thinking to give a round here to provide collective answers to some of the questions that have been left open. And who wants to start?
I can make a few. I was
Yes,
thinking of
please,
the
go ahead.
gentleman sitting in the front row, left hand, to make a very interesting point about the innovation of a company like Genentech. They reflect some kind of strategy, policy, and of course the big investment. I think this is a very good point, but requires a little bit of clarification. For example, all the innovative drug that came from Genentech, none of them came from policy implemented by management, decision from management. Came all from grassroots approach from individual scientists, etc., who initially did in their own spare time, etc. At the very beginning, actually, management was not very happy at all about these things. There was the management that became the bureaucracy, like everybody's been lamenting, etc. So what was very unique at the time was having this policy that a new scientist or any scientist can spend some of his or her time to do what is his or her favorite project. And when I came to Genentech, I was not asked at all to work on what ended up work on angiogenesis. I was working on something completely different. Now, I had this opportunity to spend some of my time in doing that. And I think that is, I thought it was an extremely important and valuable lesson. It actually was essentially copied by companies like Google, etc., maybe with some success, etc. But it's, of course, would reflect only very unique time, with the very unique people who are extremely motivated, they don't work from 9 to 5, etc., which is very rare, I guess.
Thank you. Pierluigi.
I've turned the...
So you can't speak anymore.
A couple of thoughts. A gentleman back there was saying, is it true that Western country cannot invest in education? Only China or dictator country can do that. I think it is true that democracies are pushed toward short-termism. I think it's inevitable because you need to win the next election, and that focus minds on the next election. I think it was easier to invest in education when the budget constraint was less tight. And today, in every country, the budget constraint has become more tight as a result of two simple factors. Number one, on average, growth rates have gone down. And two, population growth is not only not positive, it's often negative. The combination of the two makes sustaining a permanent deficit much, much more difficult and creates a tighter budget constraints. And the knee-jerk reaction is, I cut things that don't show up at the next election. So if the choice is between cutting sort of some unemployment subsidy or cutting education, I cut in education. So that's the role of organizations like this, is to make it more costly to do so, because it's easier to do because nobody complains. And I think that having to complain is useful. On the focus on comparative advantage, I completely agree. I don't want to disappoint Stratzabosco saying that it's not that I don't want to invest in technology in Italy, but I say that it is true that we need to exploit first our comparative advantages. And there is no American I know that went to Italy and wasn't in love with everything that was there. And I think that's a factor that we should not ignore and should capitalize on. And the other factor we should capitalize on, which is both an opportunity and a challenge, is that there is 1 billion of Chinese and 1 billion of Indians who want to come and see Venice, Florence, and Rome. And if you have gone to Venice, Florence, and Rome recently, you know that already now they're pretty crowded. So how to do this in an effective way without destroying our cities is not a piece of cake, and that needs sort of an urgent thing. urgent thinking. And the last word, I don't want to sound like Italy is always terrible, etc. I think that we like to sort of cry on ourselves, but the reason why I started with some data is to say, look, we've been crying all along, but the last 20 years, historically, has been dramatically different than the previous 20. This is in the data, it's not in the people. It's like Leopardi was complaining about the fact that people always say that the weather was better in the past. However, you look at the statistic of the weather, and the weather now is hotter than it was in the past. This is a fact, and the fact is the last 20 years has been terrible.
Francesco, I think yes, because this is important. This was a very right, this was a very depressing meeting because, you know, as we were saying, you know, we were very negative. But maybe not everyone noticed that Luigi Zingales finally offered at least one solution to the Italian problem. Let's make more children.
Thank you for this major contribution to demography. Well, I think that the net effect of this meeting was that although we said some very bad thing, and although we painted a very somber picture of our country, we all seem to be in a good mood. And I think that the reason why we are in a good mood is because we agreed on some fundamental truth. I think that we found some agreement on something that needs to be done. We need some more strategic planning. We need to focus on what we are good at. We need to keep sending good people abroad because there is a net effect and there will be a net effect. We have a very strong cultural problem and educational problem, and the way to cure it is by working on the younger generation because there is no hope to change the old ones. And we need to make more children. So I think that at least we can agree on something. I think that ISNAF should... Something fun, exactly, and something fun. All of them are fun things to do. I think that ISNAF will take up this challenge and will try to develop and offer you, hopefully in the near future, the opportunity to contribute further, not only to the debate, but also to the action. Thank you very, very much for your contributions.